Monday, May 12th, 2025. The purpose of this hearing is for discussion and public input of the proposed FY26 budget. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Rawls,
Present.
Commissioner Durrett,
Here.
Commissioner Oster,
Here.
Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Russell, Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Thompson, Commissioner Fox, Commissioner Jay,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier. 8 members.
Thank you. So we do have county employees here, directors of departments, and we also have some of our nonprofits here to be able to answer any questions that our commissioners have. I will go ahead and start with Director Caldwell. And if you want to have any comments to commission, I know we just heard you just a few minutes ago, but you have the floor, sir.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Chris Caldwell, 400 Main Street. Ultimately, we can discuss whatever you want to discuss. We can go through anything in the budget book that you want to go through. If you want to hear from people in the audience, that is fine as well. I guess I will just start by taking your questions, and we can go from there.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions for Director Caldwell? Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. Director Caldwell, I do see on the preliminary that I have here, you don't like that promotion?
I don't think I'd want that promotion, but thank you.
I should say demotion. Just wanted to talk to you for a few minutes because everybody, especially county employees, tunes in on raises. So if you could just talk to us a little bit about what that looks like, not only this year, but what collectively, how that all comes together and how you come to the numbers that you presented us for our county employees. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So ultimately, you'll remember, and as we did the FY25 budget, and that when that got approved, there was basically a 2% raise in the FY25 budget for county employees. Then we came back in, I guess, November or December and asked, and you all approved an additional 2% for county employees this past January for a total of 4%. As we prepared this FY26 budget, and I'll talk about, I'm probably going to say some things that you heard at our 1 o'clock finance committee meeting, but I'll say it again anyway. As we started preparing the budget for 26, we realized pretty early on that it was going to be a pretty flat budget from a revenue standpoint. And reason being, and we've talked about it, is the property tax ratio has a big impact, especially on any fund that receives property tax, general fund, debt service fund, and schools. And so we knew that, and talking to the property assessor, that ratio had a negative $9.6 million increase, not only for our budget in 25, but as we look at the 26 budget. So so we knew from a property tax standpoint that was going to be fairly flat. Then knowing that we just approved an additional 2% raise back in January, we had to account for that wasn't in the 25 budget. So you kind of start behind when you do that. We're always trying to maximize what we can do for county employees. Ultimately, we got to a 2% raise beginning in January of 26. We would prefer to do that earlier, but it's with the revenue constraints the way they are, there was just no way of getting there. And so beginning in January, it'd be one step and 1%, which equates to approximately a 2% raise for employees. What we have said to you all in our individual meetings, and what the mayor always likes to charge us to do, is as we end the year, we will look to see where things are in FY25, and if we're able to do more, we will. I will say, for those of you who were at Finance Committee, you heard me say that through March, we were about negative 10 million net from where we were this time a year ago in the general fund. So I'm not optimistic that there'll be anything else there, but we'll still look at it.
Thank you. Thank you. And how many employees do we have?
Well, I think it's, if you count
Roughly.
fee offices, so if you want to count everybody, it's like 2,700. I'm looking at Stephanie Cameron.
Okay.
I think it's around 2,700 if you count everybody.
Okay.
That's an estimate.
And are these raises, does this also include the sheriff's department?
The 2% does include sheriff's office. Though the employees that it does not include would be fee offices because they set their own salaries. And so any fee office, which is constitutional officer, that collects fees, that pay for salaries, they will set their own, but I think most typically follow what we do.
Okay, and how much is a 1% increase?
Cost.
Yes,
So a 1% increase for the year cost us about 1.3 million.
thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for Director Caldwell? Okay.
If not, if you would like, I know we have a lot of people here from the nonprofit agencies. This was the year where, and I'm gonna let Director Jenny Holden get into more details here. It was our FY25 was the last year of our last 3-year cycle as it relates to nonprofit grants, and so it was time to put that back out to take proposals, and so that was done. So what you have in here is related to those new scores on the nonprofit world. I would say this: we broke that up a little bit differently. We took economic development out separately because I think it's important that we view those separately. And then the other bucket of money would be the amount that comes from hotel motel tax. So anything from a nonprofit world, from our 10%, that we can drive and push, I say push, we can push to hotel motel we do. There's got to be a tourism component to it. And so the ones that are in this book, we are content that there is a hotel, a tourism component to what they do. So I would say, and then the 40% of hotel motel goes to the direct promotion of tourism, which for us is Visit in Knoxville, which we enter into a contract with. And so, but getting into the details of those, what we call community grants now, I'll turn it over to Jenny.
Thank you. Director Holden.
Jenny Holden, Grants and Community Development. We released our notice of funding opportunity, which is just a packet that we put out in the community to say, hey, we have this new funding cycle opening up. If you're interested, please apply. We had about, I think it was 73 applicants this year, with a total of $457,000 to allocate to nonprofit agencies. So clearly we could not fund all of those. We had a panel of experts that scored the applications, and we were able to fund. You will see next month we'll bring some opioid contracts to you as well, but using a little bit of opioid interest funding that we have available right now and our local dollars, we were able to fund 27 nonprofit agencies out of the 73.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Director Holden? Everybody's being very quiet. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Commissioner Hill again.
Well, I just wanted to comment that through this past year, we have had some pushback from some of our commissioners on several of these items. So I just would please encourage any of these commissioners that have questions to please, let's get them out now. Let's get them talked about so that when we come to approve this budget next month, we are not delayed on it. So that's just kind of a comment to all of us in general.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Commissioner Rawls.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this question is for Mr. Caldwell. The hotel motel tax, and this isn't, this is not a revenue opportunity conversation. No, I'm kidding. Y'all had to be at finance to understand what he's
It's an
mad.
inside
He's
joke.
mad at me, y'all. But no, hotel motel tax. Have we seen an increase of that from last year to this year?
Yeah, and so, I'm not mad at you yet, is what I should say.
Okay.
No. So we have saw over the last 4 years continued growth in our hotel motel tax fund. And we decided this year that we would break out a little bit differently this page in our budget, because ultimately we would just show what we would note as defined service contracts. So what we did is, if you look at the Knox County code, and we put the code in there. Basically, for us, we have to do 40% for the direct promotion of tourism, 40% for either debt construction operations or maintenance of tourism facilities. We then have to give 10% to the city of Knoxville, and then we keep 10% that's related to tourism as well. So when you look at hotel, motel, I think that's the most important thing you got to keep in mind is what we fund through there has to be tourism related. And oftentimes we will have some ideas that we think could generate some tourism that we may would call our external auditors on, or the state, to say, hey, we think we could fund this through here. What's your take? And, you know, and we'll get feedback. So everything that's in this list, we're comfortable with as it relates to tourism, right? And one note that I would say, and talked about this, this will be the first budget where we have put our debt obligation for the multi-use stadium in there. It's a little higher than what we had first talked about for one reason. In this first year, the condos and apartments are not going to be done in time, so we get the full benefit of that TIF and pilot, so we have to subsidize that to start. We decided to budget a little bit more high, just to be safe, to try to cover that. It may not end up being that. Sales tax could be higher, so we'll see how all that operates and go from there. But ultimately, anything in here, we view hotel, motel in our world, in the finance world, in those 4 buckets, and you'll see how we break out those funding in those buckets.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Caldwell. Commissioner Fox, you just got here, so I wanted to be able to say we do have our directors here, and we do have nonprofits here in case you have any questions for them. This is a great time for everybody to ask the questions. It's our budget hearing. We'll have one next week again, but we've had that opportunity to sit down with the mayor, with Director Caldwell, and so this is a time, if anybody has anything. And I would really quick like to recognize Mayor Jacobs, just walked in. Commissioner Jay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Caldwell, can you break out the sheriff's office fixed cost increase? Is that mostly tied to salary?
Yes, we can break that out.
That's, I know there's a capital side for some equipment, but I'm looking at your,
Note on page,
I'm on 24.
yeah.
I'm fairly certain that has to do with just,
So the 2.5 fixed cost increases, and Jennifer may have the exact amounts that we'll get to you. Ultimately, about 400,000 of that is related to overtime. So it's overtime that they're already spending that we want to budget for. There is also increases in there of pharmacy and food, and I think those total combined pharmacy and food, maybe 800 to 900,000. Looking at Allison too, she probably has the exact figures. There's also just some contractual increases in there related to contracts in general, and so they have a few contracts that relate to the jail that had fixed cost increases. Am I forgetting anything? Oh, technology crime solving went up as well. And so when you add all those together, it's about the 2.5. That includes, just so you're aware, also in that number, we broke UOP out separate, so UOP is not in that number. So UOP is separate. The 2% raise in January of 25 is separate. So anything that I went over is what makes up that 2.5.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions or comments?
If you don't mind, Madam Chair, I think it's always important to point this out. And so I think anybody in the audience or anybody who's watching on TV, sit here and they wonder, why is nobody asking questions? I'd like for everybody to know that there's not a day that goes by that I don't hear from one of you 11. And it's not bad. It's just questions, right? What's going on in the budget? What are we doing here? What are we doing there? You all are always asking questions. I hope we are always giving you answers. And so when you sit here and we don't have a lot of questions, I think it's important for the public to know that you all already ask a lot of these, and it's in one-on-one meetings, and it's phone calls, it's at breakfast, it's at lunch, it don't matter. Ultimately, we have ongoing conversations, which I hope that you feel leads to make this process as transparent as possible, although when we get to meetings like this, sometimes there's not questions.
Thank you for saying that. That is very true. Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For Director Caldwell, these may seem random, but I was looking at the Children's Emergency Shelter line item, $45,000. This is on page 31. And is that, right now, Knox County is receiving a grant? Is that what this is reporting for that particular item?
Great question. That is not the grant. So they do get grant funding on top of this. The two items on this list, CASA and Catholic Charities with the asterisks by them, those are funded in juvenile court judges' operational budget. So these are general fund dollars on top of the grant that you're referring to. So those are in their budget. We just show them here because we enter into a contract. But those do appear in Judge Irwin's budget, so they're not separate, but we show them here just because they are a contract.
Okay. So, and my question to you is, how much of the money used to fund Judge Irwin's contract comes from grants rather than Knox County tax revenue? Can you say that offhand?
Wow, no, I'll have to, we'll get that answer for you.
Okay.
I know.
Because I think this ought to be funded 100% by Knox County dollars. For one thing, we know this from the federal government, that the grant environment is unstable. But I think, we are servicing Knox County citizens, and I think Knox County citizens ought to fund this. And I'm just saying that to you. I'd like to make room in the budget to fully fund that with Knox County dollars and continue contracting with Catholic Charities to run the program, because they always have run the program.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll get with their office and figure out how much of what funding is grant funded related to their total, and I'll email you.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I noticed that the representative from the zoo is here. I had a question I noticed that, in the hotel motel tax for under debt, construction, operations, maintenance, and tourism, most all of them are pretty self-explanatory, but then I know we have, the zoo receives $175,000 in the 10% section, but we're also receiving $1 million. Would you care to elaborate what that money will be going towards and spent on?
Sure. Thank you for the question, and thank you. I'm Bill Street, the President and CEO of Zoo Knoxville. The zoo is the largest visited organization here in the city. We have a little close to 600,000 visitors. Those dollars are going to be used for a public event area that's located within the zoo that will service a couple of different purposes. The first, I'm not sure everybody's aware, but all Knox County Public School students come to the zoo for free as part of a field trip program. We love that. It is very unique in the zoo world. That's usually not something that happens, and we appreciate that. In fact, we had 4,000 people there today, I think, from that zoo in the rain. One of the challenges we face is that they don't have necessarily spaces to have lunch, and they come here during that hour of 9:30 to 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that is going to be redeveloping an old area of the zoo that's going to allow for those lunches to happen and to ease that access. And then in addition, we are working to make the zoo even more resilient. So we are opening up some new exhibits, including a new attraction that happens this winter. And that will be an evening event. And so that space will be utilized for that event space as part of that experience, and will provide opportunity for food and beverage and other components, other revenue generating things to help make the zoo more resilient.
Gotcha.
So that plan will be hopefully implemented into the end of this year and then into the next year, 2026.
Okay. And I'm assuming a project of that scale, the $1 million here is not going to be enough to fully cover that project.
Correct. It is part of an overall $7 million capital improvement in the overall zoo, which includes an area called the ravine and a bunch of areas. If you've been to the zoo recently, you'll notice we got a lot of mud today all over the place. That's just part of that overall experience. I think it's important to note that our zoo is unique in that we see 50% of our attendance is tourism-based, and 50% is local resident-based. That's important because we have been able to track that economic impact. Our visitors spend about $35 million a year in Knox County when they come to visit the zoo and spend time here. And that a particular experience we're providing the hope is that that's going to generate another night visit here, which only helps with the hotel and motel tax and the other areas for that tourism component. So that's a very high percentage of visitation that's coming into this community from externally.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Fox?
If you want to just, before you sit down, you can say on the hot seat.
Oh, I thought it was so close.
Yeah. I know there's at least one 501c3 organization that uses the zoo as a fundraising opportunity. And I just want to know, is that available to all 501c3s? Can they call up the zoo and say, hey, we want to do a fundraiser, and the zoo would just make that facility available to all?
It kind of depends. So the way we handle most of those community-based components is that we look at them as almost private events. So a 501c3 that wants to come out to the zoo can work with us in partnership. In many cases, some of those experiences like the fun runs and some of the other components, they are actually renting the zoo space for that particular time period to cover our expenses and so forth. And so we run them almost as private events, although they are handled from 501c3 particular groups. Our goal is to make the zoo as accessible as possible, but as you can imagine, if we opened up to come to the zoo for free for every 501c3 in East Tennessee, we would be very, very busy, and the zoo would probably not be open to the public all the time. So it's a little bit of more of a interaction in terms of them hiring the space for that early morning event or the evening event. But the intent is to grow more and more of those opportunities so that we're a bigger part of the community.
Okay. Are there any 501c3s that currently are not paying rent, in other words, renting out the facility as a private event in order to conduct a fundraiser or, just an event?
I'll have to get back to you with a list of those. I am sure that we're doing small components for some 501c3s, but the really bigger events that you see there, typically those are rented out, and especially those that are associated with a corporation, so a hospital fund run or something like that. There's typically that's typically run like a particular event. But I'm happy to provide you with a list of all the groups that we. Now we'll have meetings there regularly. If Allison over there wants to do a meeting at the zoo, she knows me. She can call me up. We'll give her space for those kinds of things. But the intent is for big events, and especially those public events. That's handled like an event.
Yeah, I would greatly appreciate a list of those entities and, whether or not they're, paying effectively a rental fee for the facility.
Happy to provide. Give me just a day or two, and I'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate it. Okay, do we have any other questions? All right.
Yeah, I do have a question, for
Okay.
Director Caldwell. I'd like to know a little bit more about the process for all the recipients of money from Knox County. The process of an entity getting approved for money.
You're saying like the
The nonprofits, yeah.
Hi, Commissioner. We released a notice of funding opportunity back in January, and that went out community-wide to let folks know that our new 3-year defined service grant cycle was opening. I believe we gave everybody about 30 days that we had that application open. We had about 73 applications. Once those came in, we put together a panel of experts. We had somebody from Knox County Schools, people from Grants Community Development, the Health Department, United Way, our procurement department that scored those applications. And then once those scores were finalized and tallied, the decision on how to fund was done based on the top scores.
Okay. And is there a way that the commission could be provided with that all that decision-making?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I can
great.
send you all a spreadsheet today that has all the scores. And we were actually, and I said this a little earlier before you got here, we had a little additional opioid interest funding that was available this year. So we were able, the top applicants that their programs fit for the opioid funds, we actually are going to plan on funding some of those, but that's all included in the spreadsheet, and I'll send it to all of you after the meeting.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, well, seeing no more questions, I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody for making yourselves available today. I know the weather was nasty and sounds like it probably still is. So make sure you drive careful going back. And I especially want to thank Director Caldwell and his staff for your tireless efforts in this budget. I know that it has not been a fun process. Our second public hearing is scheduled for Monday, May 19th at 3 p.m. And if there is no further questions or comments to come before this committee, I will like a motion to adjourn. Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Dura, second by Commissioner Thompson. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. This public hearing is adjourned. Thank you.